this law, Kate's Law. So let's bring in our panel. Vince Colanese is the editorial director for the Daily Caller, and Isaac Wright is the former executive director of the pro-Hillary Clinton super PAC, Correct the Record. You guys both have like 10 other jobs. We just don't have time to say them all when we're introducing you. So welcome. It's good to see you guys tonight. All right, let's talk about this. I want to play a little bit of what the defense attorney, he won this case, what he said this was about. There were a lot of political conversations around this case and the verdict last night. Here's what he said.
From day one, this case was used as a means to foment hate, to foment division, and to foment a program of mass deportation. It was used to catapult a presidency along that philosophy of hate.
Vince, I'll let you take the first swing at that.
Well, what does politics exist for if not to address issues that need to be solved in our communities? This is clearly one of them. I mean, this case has cemented San Francisco's status as a city that it both disregards the law and doesn't have a capacity to enforce it, apparently, because you have a case go before a court and they can't even find him guilty of involuntary manslaughter, which by its very definition is what occurred here. They charged him with possession of the weapon. What more did they need to do in order to prove that this was involuntary manslaughter? This is a monumental miscarriage of justice, and now the federal government's going to take a stab at it.
Yeah, and in fact, we have the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, talking about this with Tucker a short time ago. We want to play that, and then we'll get your reaction, Isaac.
We are confident, and we are going to do everything possible to ensure that happens, although there are some potential other charges that could be brought against him. And before being deported and released, we think he should face every charge that is proper to be brought against him. And you can be sure our Department of Justice is working right now to bring any charges that are appropriate.
So, Isaac, it then sparks this conversation again here in Capitol Hill about building the wall, about DACA is something that the Democrats want to, sort of negotiate over with government spending next week when we run out of money. It changes the immigration debate, at least for a few days after this verdict.
Yeah, well, I think this is more of a criminal justice issue than an immigration issue. The defense's argument, from what I've read, seems to have some holes in it potentially, but hopefully if there's a federal charges brought, they can sort that out. As far as the relation to immigration, I mean, the question here, when he was held and released by the local authorities in California, he was being held on a drug charge. He was a nonviolent offender up until that point. Now there is, of course,
did have 7 felony convictions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
this
5
is somebody.
deportations.
This is somebody who was a criminal.
Absolutely,
he was a criminal, and he did not need to be here.
But Isaac,
to say that
it's not an immigration issue, though. I mean, the predicate to this is the immigration policy, and San Francisco immigration policy specifically, is the reason he was in the country and murdered an American woman. This wouldn't have been a criminal justice issue if he was kept out of the country.
But that's exactly the problem. Why are our cities having to set our national immigration policy? That shouldn't be the responsibility of San Francisco. That shouldn't be the responsibility of any one city. That's where Congress has failed to pass comprehensive immigration reform, and we're pushing that duty onto cities, and we're leaving it to cities' discretion of what to do. And the problem is—
But when they decide they're not going to cooperate with federal requests, these detainer requests, where they know this guy has been in and out of the country 5 times, 7 felony convictions, and then they've got a request from the feds, from the immigration officials, hold on to him, and they say, nope, we're just going to let him go, and then this happens.
So that's exactly the problem of where people are missing the background. I used to work in state government, and I can tell you, folks who work in state government and municipal government frequently get frustrated with Washington Beltway thinking, the fact that Washington is out of touch with what's happening in the rest of America. We pay federal taxes for Congress to set an effective immigration policy, which they have failed to do. We pay federal taxes for the administration and for ICE specifically to enforce immigration policy, which they are failing to do. Instead, they're passing the buck to municipalities and to states and saying, look, we know it's not your job, it's ours, but while we're too incompetent or unwilling to do the job, we're going to ask that local law enforcement handle this. And when somebody is pulled over for a speeding ticket or for a marijuana cigarette and they're an undocumented immigrant, hold them in your jail and use the resources for that instead of known murders and rapists and prisoners that will be let out in their place.
But this guy did have multiple convictions, you know that, and when they were letting him go, the feds had asked that he be held. They knew there was a risk this guy was going to, continue to be in this country illegally, could potentially commit other felonies. So how is that the Fed's fault that they let him go?
The Fed's fault that they weren't there to pick him up. Right? That's part of the problem.
But they said, you hold him and we'll come get him.
You cannot ask these, but the problem is, when you, in practice, these state prisons, these municipal jails are left often for weeks or months waiting on somebody to come pick these prisoners up. So in those weeks or months, while you have somebody who is
This is silly. This is silly because
you're going to let that person.
Right.
This is silly. The states are not setting immigration law here. The federal government is. The federal government had custody of him, handed him over to state authorities to prosecute that state case, and then they just sent him out into the street. They didn't give him back to the federal government.
Well, I think we can all agree that the system is broken and it needs some kind of fixes.
Indeed.
One way or the other, and how that gets done is where the devil is in the details. So good to see you both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And now you're ready for Friday night to go out after getting your blood pressure up. All right, we are monitoring that vote-a-rama on Capitol Hill as the Senate nears approval of a potentially historic tax cut bill. It would be a major victory for President Trump. Coming up, as another lawmaker's secret sexual harassment settlement is unveiled.